Hello and welcome to this tutorial on getting started in After Effects. Today I would love to talk about keyframing. Let's get to it. We left it last time where we had all of these properties here. And we can change the values of the properties simply by typing the number or by scrubbing the value, by copying and pasting. So there's a number of ways that we can use to change the values. So keyframing refers to changing the values over time so that I can say move the clip to go from point A to point B gradually, or I can change the scale of the clip or the opacity of the clip or pretty much anything on the clip that I want to change. So let's talk about that. What is a keyframe? I define a keyframe as a moment in time. So a keyframe is a moment in time where you tell After Effects, or by the way, Premiere or any other app that accepts keyframes. So in that moment of time, you tell the application exactly what the value of that property is at that moment in time. So what moment in time are we talking about? Where the playhead is. So this moment in time right here is different than this moment in time here. So where the playhead is, or rather when the playhead is essential. So let's create two keyframes to move this clip from left to right. The first thing that we need to do is move the playhead. The when comes first. When, then what? When. Notice that I have timecode numbers right here. Right now I'm at 13 seconds and 14 frames. That's a little too much, so I'm going to move my playhead all the way to the beginning. And now, notice that my timecode is reading 0000, so I am at the beginning. All right, at this moment in time, I'm going to tell position of this layer, hey, make a keyframe. And I do that by clicking on the stopwatch to the left of the word position. And there you go. Two things happen. The stopwatch became active. You can see how now it's open. That is your visual indication that changes over time are now possible in After Effects. The second thing that happened was that I got a diamond-shaped icon in the timeline. This is the visual representation of the keyframe. So here we go. First when, then what? I moved my playhead to about 15 seconds. In fact, if you read the numbers, it says 1421. All I need to do now is change the value. So change the value of what? Well, of position. That's what we are keyframing. So I can change the value a number of ways. I can click and drag this, I can scrub the value like we learned how to do before. Don't forget, scrubbing the value simply means placing your mouse cursor on top of the number. Once it turns into a pointy finger, you can click and drag. So I can do it that way. You see how I have now another diamond-shaped icon in the timeline? That is my visual representation of my second keyframe. So again, what are keyframes? Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe that this was a term coined by Walt Disney. In traditional animation, the master animator draws keyframes. And the master animator gives the keyframes to the assistant animators, and the assistant animators draw the in-between frames. So for example, the master animator would draw on a famous cartoon character with his hand up. And then would draw a second keyframe with the famous cartoon character with his hand down. The master animator would give those two keyframes to the assistants, and they would draw the in-between. And they would draw as many frames as necessary for the time allowed. In other words, the master animator would say, hey, from here to here, 2 seconds. And then the assistant animators would go, well, this is film, so we're going at 24 frames per second. We have 2 frames. So let me see, 2 frames are 2 seconds are 48 frames. Of those 48 frames, I already have 2, so we need to draw 46 frames. So this is the keyframe, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they would just draw all of the in-between frames one by one. So this is what I'm trying to say. Without timing, keyframes can't do anything. And one keyframe is not enough. Imagine the master animator would give the famous cartoon character to the assistant animator and say, here, draw it. The assistant animator would just go, to where? See what I'm saying? So one keyframe is nothing. 2 keyframes with different values, now you have animation. And we call it animation whether it's position being animating or rotation or opacity or anything like that. And by the way, a value that is changed but not keyframed is called a global change. For example, I can change scale here. I could type a 20, as in 20%, and that clip was not keyframed, but that doesn't mean that it didn't change. So right now, I have it going from the center to the right, and the clip is much smaller. I can adjust that first keyframe by positioning my mouse cursor right on top of it and changing the value. Now it's going to go from left to right. And this takes us to the end of this tutorial. Don't forget to hit like, don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.